This is the Leading the Mosaic World podcast. My guest today is James Rust. James is the founder and CEO of the Pay Index, a startup focused on career and pay, which was spun off from Leathwaite, an international search firm which he started with three friends who he remains friends with to date. Leathwaite now has offices in London, Hong Kong, Singapore, New York, and Toronto, with James supporting the company as a non-executive director. In addition to his roles with the Pay Index and Leathwaite, he is the founder of Inspo, a student mentoring platform which connects students with working professionals with a focus on social mobility. Prior to Leathwaite, James worked for Armstrong International, building a search business with a focus on finance and operations within investment banking and asset management, having previously worked for Robert Walters. James, thank you very much for being here today.
Susan, thank you very much for having me.
Can I start off by asking you, around where and when were you born?
I was born when, oh crikey, okay, so full disclosure, 1968, so a while ago now, and I was born in Red Hill in Surrey.
I must say, I wouldn't know that you were born in 1968 to look at you, so...
You're very kind, thank you.
Yeah. And where did you grow up, and what was it like for you growing up?
I grew up in Reigate, so next door, in the same town. So had a lovely family life, I guess. Mum and dad are still alive today, so and I've got two siblings. I've got my brother who is 4 years younger than me, who's also had a career in recruitment, and my sister who is a nurse, and she's been nursing now for 20 years as well.
Okay, that's a true family of professionals. But I'm curious about your career, and to some extent, I could say yours and your brother's. How did you both get into recruitment?
Really interesting, actually. So if you go back even further, so the job that you didn't mention beforehand was that when I left school, I went to work for my father, and it was great because it was fun. I didn't want to go to university. I had a place to study at Loughborough, but decided not to take it. Worked for my dad for 5 years, and then one of my really close friends accused me of nepotism. Bless him. And that was his way of basically saying, you've just got a job. You're lucky because your dad gave it to you, whatever. So, okay, I thought, how can I prove this guy wrong that I'm capable of standing on my own 2 feet? And so I thought, well, what about a job in sales? So I had to resign to dad, which was quite scary. I thought he wasn't going to invite me back for Christmas. But I resigned from Dad's company and ended up working for a firm called Robert Walters, which obviously is recruitment, very sales orientated. So it's quite an intense sales process, as you can appreciate. And that was how I fell into it. So, but I didn't want any help from anyone, so I had to find the job on my own, and wanted a job where it's going to be basically me versus everybody else, hence sales. And then off the back of that, I moved from Robert Walters after 5 or 6 years, and then joined Armstrong, which was an amazing search firm, and learnt a hell of a lot about how to do the actual senior hiring, if you like. And then 3 of us, or 3 others, so 4 of us ganged together and thought, well, why don't we start our own business? And so we started that in 1999, and it's been fantastic, actually. We've been very lucky to have found each other and to have worked together and to have built such an amazing firm. So, and you see it today, and you see the youngsters joining now, the grads joining, and it's like, wow. And because we've expanded internationally, what's been really, I think one of the things I'm most proud of is seeing people that have moved from London, say, to the Hong Kong office or to the New York office, and they've thrived overseas, and they've really been able to experience working in a different country, which, as I'm sure you agree, is such a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there within what you said within a very short space of time.
Sorry, Susan.
But that's okay. I feel the need to go back.
Okay.
So starting off with, why didn't you want to go to university? Because, I mean, there's a lot of talk of the importance of university. And one thing we didn't mention is that you went to a rather prestigious secondary school.
Well, I was, mum and dad had to work hard, but yeah, I went to Epsom College, which unfortunately has been in the press for the wrong reasons over the last week, with the horrific scene of the head teacher being shot and her family, which is awful. I guess the only good news coming out of that is that they've got a guy called Anthony Selden who's dropping in as the interim headmaster, who's got an amazing reputation from his experiences at Brighton College and at Wellington. So, if ever a school needed someone to help them get back on their feet, I'm hoping that Mr. Selden will be able to do the world of good. Yes, so I was at that school. I was, after being in education for 5 years there, and living away from home, I just didn't fancy the idea of going away for another 3 years to university. So I was quite keen not to continue to go, basically to go to another institution and do that. So I decided not to take up my offer to study engineering.
Yeah, and I mean, you had the opportunity, and you decided against it. And for me, it's quite interesting when you mention not wanting to go away from home, because I'm based in Milton Keynes, and we, for a number of years, the two things we've been crying out for. One is city status, which we now have.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And then the second thing is a university. And I mean, we've got a base, MKU, which is actually where I am at the moment. And one of the things that are reasons why we want a university, aside from the fact that we're a growing city, it's so that young people don't have to go away. And because often as well, young people going away don't come back. So we lose talent out in that way. But it's interesting that there is the argument from your perspective that young people don't want to leave home. And I guess you were in that position.
I was, yeah. I mean, whether I was homesick or whatever. But what is interesting is that the Pay Index has built a couple of reports to help school kids work out what they should do when they come to leave school. So should they go to university? Should they do an apprenticeship? Should they go straight into the world of work? One of the interactive reports that we offer year groups 12 and 13 is for them to see what proportion of individuals from where they live end up studying locally, or where do they go to university. So if they're in Devon, for instance, do they stay in Devon, or do they go to Cornwall, or do they go to Somerset, or do they go further afield? How many go to North England, for instance? And what tends to happen is that a lot of people do stay close to home, either one, because they need to, because of the family situation and they need to support their family, or they've got a young family if they're mature students. And then the second reason is actually they may not want to travel. So I think the local university is so key. And if it's got the relevant courses, how fantastic is that?
Yeah. So can you tell me more? I mean, what is the Pay Index? What is the Pay Index? I don't want to make assumptions. What is it all about?
So the Pay Index, we created, actually, it was initially part of Leathwaite. And then we raised some investment money and we spun it out of Leathwaite in 2019. The initial concept of the Pay Index is an executive pay tool where any professional can put in anonymously what their job is and where they're working. They don't need, it's all anonymous, so they don't put in the company name. They just put in that, their background information, etc., and how much they're paid, and then they're able to compare themselves to their peer group. But also they're able to look at data such as gender pay. So if they're a woman, for instance, are they being underpaid? And we have been helping to wrong that gender pay gap, or helping to right the gender pay gap. Actually, I could say help right the wrong. There you go. But also it helps if somebody wants to move locations. So whether they want to move from one city to another, how does pay vary in those different cities? But also how does the expense vary? So is it more expensive to live in London or San Francisco? And you can use the data on the pay index to be able to look at that. So we've got two sets of tools. We've got a set of tools for professionals, and then we've got a set of tools that we use for school children as well. And I think we've had it in over 300 schools now, mainly in schools that really need the help. But it has been so powerful. So I remember, so I'll jump in. You tell me to stop if
I will pause you for a minute, because I'd love to explore a bit more around the importance and impact of the tool for professionals before we then talk more about how it's of value to education.
So the reason it was created, which I think may answer your question, is that if you are an executive or a professional and you're working away, there are very few places that you can get accurate data on as to whether you're being paid fairly. Okay, so if you're a banker, if you're an accountant, if you're, it doesn't matter what career you're doing, if you're working in public sector and you want to know, are you being paid fairly, you can sign up and then you can see how much you're paid to your peer group. And it's for you to then be able to use that data to be able to go to your manager and make sure that, if you can't get a fair pay rise, and you know how high inflation rates are at the moment, if it's 10% and people are losing out if they're not getting the appropriate pay rises. But again, can they afford to get the pay rises? Does the government have enough money? Well, that's a whole political argument. We'll probably steer clear of that. But if for instance, you're looking to move jobs, and this was why we created at Leathwaite. So we would headhunt somebody from one organization and we'd be saying to them, right, we've got this great job in South Africa, for instance. We want you to move to Johannesburg. And they're going, well, how much should I be paid? I don't know what the pay data is there. So the whole idea of the pay index is that they can sign up with the pay index and then do some research off their own bat.
Yeah, I could argue, just because I like to ask these questions, why can't they just trust their employers that their employers will offer them a fair salary?
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And if you look at some of the data that we have shows that employers don't necessarily match the pay of somebody. The people that get paid the best are normally the ones that move every couple of years, unfortunately, because they are then paid mark to market. The ones that are there for a long time can or might be left behind in terms of pay. So this is just a check and a balance, I guess. And it provides pay transparency. So all organizations of a certain size and above buy in a lot of pay data to make sure that so that they can understand how their pay varies against their competitors. But that data is not available to members of staff. So we're trying to right that wrong by providing that pay transparency element for them.
Yeah, and I can also begin to see from that how it helps with the gender pay gap. And people are talking also of the ethnic pay gap as well.
Yeah.
And you could also, I'm sure we're going to go to this social economic pay gap as well as that, because from the research that I've done, I know that men are more likely to move around more. They're more likely to ask for pay increases than women are, and all of those things. So I can see from that how the pay index is and should be of huge value to executives, and I hope people listening will think that, gosh, this is something I should get hold of, and more people will start using it, because I guess the more people use it, the more data you get as well.
Yes. So the more people that sign up, you're absolutely right, Susan. The better the data set. I mean, it's pretty good. We've got literally tens of thousands of profiles from around the world.
That's a lot.
People signing up from over 100 countries. It's amazing how popular it is.
And that's just in a very short time frame, 2019.
Yeah. But what is really interesting is that the pay transparency, you're absolutely right. Women are normally more reticent about asking for a pay rise, or they don't feel for whatever reason, whereas men are more on the front foot in that regard. But if they have that data and they're able to show, look, there is a pay gap, then I'll give you an example, Susan. So my daughter graduated a couple of years ago. When she was starting to work in PR, she obviously had been living and breathing the pay index because, this is what dad's building and whatever. And so she signed up and had a look, and she saw that there was a big gap in PR between men and women. So when she was fortunate enough to get a job offer, and she said to them, well, I think you need to pay me a bit more because I know there's a gender pay gap in this sector. And they went, what? And she said, look, this is the data. And she showed them some of the reports from the pay index, and they upped her salary, not by much, but by 5%.
That's a lot.
And as a result of that, fantastic, isn't that? But that was, and look, it was a lot of effort just for my daughter to get a small pay rise, but it's been used by so many other people as well. And we get stories coming in from different emails saying, thank you for the data. It's helped me renegotiate my package. I now feel it's interesting. This is a massive stereotype generalization, so please take this in how it's meant to come across. But women want to be paid fairly.
Yes.
Men want to be paid the most. So I know that sounds dreadful, but that is the primary differentiator. That's what we see in our data anyway.
And you have worked in the recruitment space for numerous years, and you've spoken to numerous men and numerous women. And so while it's never all men and never all women, you are talking based on a significant amount of experience.
Yes, I am. And look, the great news is that if you speak to any, I'm no longer active as a recruiter. I'm running these tech businesses now. But all firms now, DE&I is such a high agenda point, if you like, from board level across the organization. And what that's helping to do is that any recruitment campaign that goes on, they will be wanting to make sure that they've got a diverse group of candidates, whether it's but how you measure diversity is it by gender, is it by ethnicity, is it by sexuality, is it by disability, whatever the matrix or the metric is that you're using, we're seeing more and more, I guess we're seeing more of a leveling up type approach coming in across organizations now. And it will take a while, but if they start at the entry level, at the early careers space, and then over time, it'll become into middle management and then senior management as well.
Yeah. And I love the fact that it's a tool that provides people with data. So if women or other people aren't feeling that confident in just saying they want more than what is being offered, or they're given a pay range and they're initial instinct is to accept the lower pay rate within that range. They've got data which can give people a confidence that might not otherwise exist to have conversations. And I think that's amazing. And it's something that can really help to balance things up. And for me, it's not about disadvantaging men or anyone. It's about making sure everyone has an opportunity. And so I've got to commend you for doing that work.
Well, it's been, thank you. I'll thank you for that. It's an amazing experience, actually, because you are genuinely helping people to, if you give them the data, then they can make the decision. They may decide, do you know what? I'm only slightly underpaid. I'll leave it. But they might just say at the next pay review, do you know what? I think I'm slightly underpaid. And they can either negotiate with their business, with their manager, or they can choose to walk and vote with their feet. So I think it's up to them, isn't it?
Yeah, and hopefully if they do decide that when it comes to review period that they want to ask for an increase, that they do it at the earliest stage of the process rather than wait until an offer is made and then they say they want more and budget money has already been allocated, which is a problem that exists sometimes. But I'm then interested in education because you mentioned that this is in, I can't quite remember, but quite a number of schools.
Yeah, 300 we got 300. It into.
300. Why is it important to schools?
Well, I think it is vital that students know what's going on when they join the workforce. We sell several tools to different schools. So there's one about getting into university. There's one about getting an apprenticeship, which, as you know, has had a bit of a renaissance. And then there are some people that just don't want to, like me, don't want to do a university degree, and they want to go straight into the world of work. And if they have an idea as to how much pay is, one of the tools that we produce shows the outcomes. So if you go into work, how much might you be paid over 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And they can compare that, Susan, whether they've gone straight into work or they've done an apprenticeship or they've done a degree. Then they can say, what degree have they done and where? And they get an idea as to how pay varies, if you like, by their education, which, again, it just helps them make those career choices.
Yeah.
We also show the gender pay gap to school kids as well. So they are aware. This is what's so shocking. There is a gender pay gap for graduates. So you imagine you come out of university, there's very little to differentiate you from your peer group because you might have got an internship or whatever. But why is there a gender pay gap for boys and girls? That shouldn't, when you're 21 and you start work, why should a woman be paid less than a man? And if a woman understands that and sees, okay, it might not be much of a pay gap, but if there is one, they can just make sure that they're making a noise about it.
Yeah, and I mean, you probably haven't read my book yet, my Male Perspectives on the Value of Women at Work, because when you do, it will provide you with some of the insights into why the pay gap exists. But I like the fact that they're informed, and I mean, knowledge is power, as you say. So I think it's great that that information is provided to schools, and hopefully those young people, almost as soon as they enter the workplace, they'll start signing up to the Pay Index as well, so that they have the direct information and the data to present to employers themselves as they go along. So it truly is a powerful tool. But I'm interested in those options, going straight into the world of work, going for an apprentice or going to university. And as you said earlier, you started off by working with your father. What were you doing? What does your father do, or did he do? Because I suspect he's retired now. What did you do? What was it like?
So he was a loss adjuster. So that's part of the insurance world. And I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you're old enough, Susan, but there was a really bad storm in 1987. It was the 16th of October, 1987, actually. I remember the date. And lots of houses had storm damage. And so it was he was shorthanded, and I was sort of a surly teenager at home, didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was a way of getting me out the house, and I was able to help him in his business. And he ran his own business too. So I guess that seeing your dad doing that meant that it was normal. I wasn't I was obviously worried about starting my own business, but it wasn't something it wasn't an anathema to me. It was something that I could see, okay, this could work.
Yeah. So did you enjoy it?
For a bit. Again, didn't really want to do that long term. And then my experience, I was very keen to move on once my friend had accused me of nepotism, because that was basically the red line, if you like.
Yeah. And I mean, and that says a lot about you and your integrity, and so that's great. But I'm just thinking, if you think back now, there's this thing that people say at times: what would you say to your 16-year-old self? So thinking back now, would you have done what you did and gone straight into the work world, or given the opportunity, would you have gone to university or just found an apprenticeship and done that?
The apprenticeships at the time weren't really for the field that I was looking at. I think if I had my time again, I'd have gone to uni. It's interesting. I mean, look, I don't know what I'd have ended up doing if I did a degree in engineering. I might have been working at Apple designing the latest, whatever it happened to be, but I don't know if I would be good enough for that either. But I think one of the things that's been quite interesting is that people have looked at my background and they expect me to have a degree because of what I've done. And they're quite often surprised that I don't have a degree. And I wonder why. I don't want to be seen as a second-class citizen because I don't have a degree, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what is the advantage, if there is? I mean, well, because I suspect there's still some people that do believe degrees are superior, you're second class if you don't have one. But from all your experience, and I guess from recruitment to what you do now with students, is there an advantage of degrees and going to university over apprenticeships? Or actually, are people better off going for apprenticeships, especially now that you can do a degree apprenticeship?
It's interesting. So when we've been recruiting for the last 20 years, normally a degree was a must-have for the roles that we were recruiting for. Now, quite often, you also had to have a professional qualification, and you couldn't have had that professional qualification unless you had a degree. Like, for instance, if you were an accountant, most accountancy firms wanted you to have a degree before they took you on. If we were going for, one of the big four type people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would say, I think it's a shame. I think there's a massive, people miss out on a whole range of talent of I'm not just saying this because I don't have a degree, but there are a load of very bright bunnies out there and motivated people that don't have a degree, and they are often overlooked, which is not right. And there's a whole load of reasons why people might not want to go to university. But in asking your question about the apprenticeship, I think that's a fantastic way ahead. The idea of getting some work experience and being trained on the job, and you're being paid, and you're not then going to be encumbered with these huge student loans, the student loan tax effectively, which is and they're changing the rules again in September, Susan, as well, so they become more onerous. I think that's a definite way to consider. And it means that the apprenticeships, I hope they become more and more common. The problem, there is an apprenticeship levy, as you know, which is applied to businesses over a certain size. But so many of those levies are not being taken up. So it's a wasted opportunity by many organizations.
Yeah.
I also believe that students should do some work experience as part of their degree. So going back to the old sandwich degree courses, where you come out of university with your degree and you've already got some experience, you're far more employable than if you've just spent 3 years in a classroom. And that was exacerbated during the COVID years, obviously, when students weren't even able to go to the classroom, let alone, or the lecture hall, let alone get some work experience.
Yeah. And I know that because like I mentioned Cranfield, they're not paying me, but I will say that with MKU, there is a big focus on degree apprenticeships. So it is gaining traction. But I'm just wondering, what would you actually say to that employer that still says to work with me, whether it's the large Big Four corporate consultancy, a corporate organization or a small organization, that organization that says you need to have a degree in order to be able to work with us as an organization? What would you say to them? I mean, to broaden their perspective, to enable them to better understand why there are other routes that are, dare I say, just as relevant.
Well, I think that brings me on to Inspo, actually, our mentoring tool, which is fundamentally there to help students that don't have a friends and family network. The classic example of going to a Russell Group university and having a nice degree so you get into a nice company. They're missing out on a whole range of talent. And I would say that the most forward-thinking organizations out there do have a degree apprenticeships. Like if you look at PwC, what Kevin Ellis is doing as their chairman, they've got and also they're a massive hire of graduates. If you think about how an accountancy firm works, most of their hires are early careers compared to experienced hires, if that makes sense. So if they can get people from diverse backgrounds, whether that's, and again, we talk about diversity, whichever element we're talking about, that firm will be able to establish better relationships with the wider world. Not everybody goes to Russell Group unis. So, and their clients weren't, they're going to have a whole mixture of clients and clients' backgrounds. So if they've got a whole mixture of accountants with different backgrounds, doesn't that make them better suited?
Yeah. So it's that, because I guess when we talk about diversity, it's very easy to say gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, but it goes much deeper than that. There is people's experiences of life and what they bring, the way they think, the way they navigate the world, and that complexity. So if you just have people with degrees, especially degrees from a certain type of university, then you're still limited, even if there's a gender diversity or a diversity in terms of ethnicity. So it's being able to bring together that broad experience and knowledge and, dare I say, capability.
Yeah, I would say you're right. If you're going for a homogeneous product and you're just hiring people from certain universities, you're going to get people that think in a similar way. Diversity of thought is key to challenge the status quo on this. And that's how businesses evolve and all the rest of it. So, and the diversity of thought you'll get from having people with different backgrounds and different interests. And I've seen that firsthand with Leathwaite. Our graduate scheme now, how many people they hire from different backgrounds, fantastic. And how that's evolved over the last 10 years is awesome. So I'm a real, the fact that 10 years ago we didn't used to hire grads, so we didn't have a scheme, but now we do, and it's brilliant. The quality of people that we get from different backgrounds, that's key.
And just Leithwaite is now an international organization with people across the world, as I mentioned, Hong Kong, Russia, Togo, different parts of the world. And I'm just wondering, so it's grown in the breadth in terms of where you operate, but it's also grown in terms of the diversity within.
Yes.
And what you do as well, like having that graduate program in of itself. How would you say, I know that you're no longer working within, but you're still a non-executive director. And I'm just wondering how that has changed the experience, both for people working within the organization to the extent that you're aware, but also more significantly for the clients.
I think Leithwaite is a more attractive place to work because it does have this diversity. And when people come there and they see they're able to interact with each other, they're more open to different experiences and to different ideas. And that also means that when we're meeting clients as well, we're able to represent them more effectively. So as you say, we've grown internationally in terms of our offices, but also in terms of where we do our searches as well around the world. And if you can put together a team that more accurately represents the business that you're hiring on behalf of, then you're going to have more success and you'll build a better rapport with them as well.
And I guess that also benefits the candidates as well.
Yeah, because they're going to be headhunted effectively, and if a headhunter is able to build they've got like 30 seconds to get somebody on the phone, excuse me, and build a rapport with them. So that 30 seconds, that approach call is key, and if there's more commonality there's more chance of gaining trust and that 30-second call becoming a half an hour meeting. And that's what you've got to, it's how you get more effective at it.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, as you said, that even if you don't have the commonality with the candidate, the fact that you are interacting in the office, and by everything you do with people from, should I say, a diversity of backgrounds, you are probably going to be better able to connect with any candidate that you're talking to.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I think that is exacerbated as well when you're talking about Gen Z. I mean, they're far more open and they have a different perspective to millennials or, whatever particular cross or segment of population you're talking about. But they want, they're far more open and they've been brought up in that environment. So to make if they're the latest and the newest cohort coming into the marketplace and you want to attract them into a business, it's vital that you've set up the business to be as attractive as possible to them.
Yeah. So I'm curious, just say a little bit more about Gen Z, because in some ways that links into Inspo, that whole younger generation. So with Gen Z, so you said they're more open, they've grown up with technology and they're more open. What else do we, within the work environment, business leaders, C-suite leaders, what do we need fundamentally? What do we need to know about them to enable us to more effectively engage with them and get the best outcomes both for them and for ourselves?
Okay, that's a big question to ask.
I'm sorry.
So I understanding Gen Z is really important. As I say, they're the newest cohort coming into the workplace. They do think differently. I mean, I've got two Gen Z in my household, a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old, and how they think about the environment how they think about social activism. What do they think about specific things relating to a workplace? Like, what do they think about hybrid working, for instance? What do they think about training? What's important to them? So do they really want to go out and get drunk every Thursday and Friday because that used to be the office culture of 10 years ago? No, they don't. And it's really, things have moved on, and it's really important that C-suite, if they want to be attractive to this cohort, they've really got to understand how Gen Z think and feel. In fact, one of the things that we do, we talked a little bit about Inspo. So as you know, it's a mentoring tool connecting students with working professionals. We've built a mentoring program or an engagement. So once a working professional connects with a student and they start the mentoring, we've built effectively lesson plans so that they are able to help the students, as you know, tell them about their company, about their sector, help them with their CVs, help them with interviews and all the rest of it. But the last session, Susan, is a reverse mentoring session. And this is gold. And our clients love this because we've also provided our mentors with, we call them safe questions. So these are questions that have been written by Gen Z.
Okay.
And so you're not going to cause offense by asking somebody, what do they think about these particular elements?
Give me an example. If you can remember off the top of your head.
Well, it might be, what do you think about Greta and climate change, for instance? And what this will do is it'll then spark a conversation, and Gen Z will then say, well, actually, because normally Gen Z are very passionate about the environment because they've inherited an environment that is obviously in a lot less, in a much worse state than it was when I was growing up 20, 30 years ago. So we've left them with a climate problem. If businesses don't understand that and they keep on flying clients all over the world on jets, and they're not thinking, oh, hang on, can we not do this by, it's little things like doing meetings by VC. Do we always have to travel by plane to go and meet a client? Is there another way of doing things? I think if you can show that, it's that sort of situation that a business needs to understand. That's a really rambly example, but hopefully the point gets across.
No, there's a lot there. And for me, I'm thinking, how come why haven't you asked me? And how come I haven't signed up to be a mentor myself? And hopefully people will listen to this and think, gosh, this is a lovely idea, because I think it's great to support a young person who doesn't have that network to be able to effectively navigate by themselves. But just as important, if not more so, is the knowledge and the understanding that you get from engaging with that young person. And so you might not have said every single thing you could have possibly said, but I think you've said enough that hopefully gets people curious enough for them to want to sign up to Inspo and mentor people themselves.
I was pitching to a client yesterday, Susan, and the great thing about mentoring is that you can be on the board at the top level of an organization and be a mentor, and you have all of that wealth of experience to share, and you can be a mentor if you've just joined that organization. Because if you're a student that's just become an employee and you've just been through that horrific process of trying to find a job, your experiences of job finding are so up to date that students are going to want to also connect with the youngest employee in the organization as well. So in fact, we've got mentors that are 19 years old that joined as school leavers that are mentoring students that are 21, 22 years old.
Yeah.
And they're helping them get a job. Isn't that fantastic?
It is, because I am of the view that you can learn from anyone. I could speak to a 2-year-old and learn something. And equally, I could speak to an 80-year-old. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I love conversation, because it's just that opportunity. I'm naturally curious. It was never knocked out of me. And it's just the opportunity to engage and learn from different people. So I do think that that is great.
Oh, that's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's great I think anybody, whenever you get to meet somebody, you always learn stuff, don't you?
You do. And I'm curious because so now you're focused on the Pay Index and Inspo, two amazing projects. You remain a director, be it non-exec, of Leathwaite.
Yeah.
Through that, you went to some amazing places, but you set that up a number of years ago with friends, and you remain friends today. I mean, how do you do that?
I think we were one of the things that we've been really lucky at is that the four of us worked together at Robert Walters in the late 90s. That just ages me, doesn't it? But that was a pretty high pressure environment, and we all saw how effective we were at working. So we trusted each other's work ethic. And when we started Leathwaite in 99, we said from the outset that we were going to pay ourselves the same no matter what we did during that year. So if one of us had an amazing year and did loads of expensive placements and, made lots of commission money type scenario, that didn't matter because all four of us brought slightly different skills and we slightly different personality. And how it's worked for the time is that the four of us, once we've paid everybody else and we've paid our bills and everybody's got their bonuses, then we'll decide how much money we're going to keep for next year to grow the business again, and then we'll divide up the rest equally between the four of us. And I think then it takes any cash argument out of the equation, which, as you can appreciate, is quite often where relationships do break down. And we know that during our 20-plus year journey, we've had bad years and we've had good years. It's like a sine curve, isn't it? You're never going to be. And so we've supported each other when they've had a bad year, and we've celebrated when we've had a good year. And we always, and the fact that we were speaking together yesterday, and we'll have a conversation at least once or twice a week for half an hour. One of us is now in New York for a couple of years, but we've got a board meeting tomorrow, and we'll all be on the line then. So it's we're very lucky that we trust each other. I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few other things as you were talking that came to mind. I mean, the trust. You knew each other because you worked together, and so you knew who you're getting into business with, and so that brought a degree of trust. For me, there's something about values.
Mm-hmm.
Aligned to that trust. There were values that you had.
Yes.
There was something about valuing each other as well as other people, but valuing each other. But behind that, it sounds as if there's a solid business model that sets out priorities. We pay our bills, we pay our people, we look after our people, we look after our business, and then we determine from that what's left, and we look after ourselves in an equitable manner.
Yeah, I think we make sure that our staff are looked after. And I'm really proud of the people that work there. And I've tried to use the same model for staff that we've hired at the Pay Index and Inspo. It's on a much smaller scale, but make sure that they're paid and looked after properly. And I come second. But then you get the commitment, and you get they want to stay on, enjoy you, and they want to stay and they want to be with you on the journey as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, the company values are really important. And you've got to think that if you go back to Leathwaite, the business, you're only as good as the clients that you're recruiting for. And if the clients that you're recruiting for don't buy your values or don't, I mean, it's very easy for them to pick another firm out there. The entry to market is so low. The bar to starting a search firm is so low, and you're only as good as your last deal. So you've got to consistently keep your standards so high. There's always ways that you could earn more money, but arguably we've been very conservative. We've never grown too quickly. We've never tried to fleece our clients. So that having that, I guess, that moral code, if you like, is really, really important. So you build up that element of trust as well.
What if you don't buy their values? Have you ever sacked a client? Because, I mean, and you might say, I can't answer this question, but have you ever had to sack a client because their ethos and values don't align with yours?
I can't think of a specific incident. I'm sure there have been scenarios over the years. I mean, obviously, it's not, you've got the business and then you've got the people you're working with. So on the whole, the people you're dealing with are pretty reasonable, but sometimes you get some individuals within an organization that maybe don't have the same values as the company, and you're thinking, crikey, this is a bit tricky. But they've got to be relatively careful because we're trying to recruit for that business, and it's very difficult to be, I mean, I do remember one search that I did, and this wasn't about difficult or people that we sacked. It was just, so I'm it's a bit of a segue, but this poor person had to recruit to two people who were literally chalk and cheese. So you have one person that was incredibly detailed orientated, a real introvert, and actually just didn't say much. The other person was an extrovert that was very was the complete opposite, and I almost had to find a schizophrenic that was going to be able to work with both effectively. So, and I, you know, that was part of my pitch. I said, look, are you a schizophrenic? That was my opening line, because we've got a very interesting role for you. But, you know, that's just you've got to find a way to sell it, haven't you, at the end of the day?
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I was in a sort of similar situation as that when I was being interviewed once. It was an internal role, and I knew both recruiting managers, and one of them was smiling at me and being very friendly, professional but friendly, and the other one was very straight-faced. I don't know you, I've got to be serious. And so I would turn to the smiling person with a big smile on my face, and then to the next person with a very straight look on my face.
So no, it's very confusing, isn't it?
Yes. No, so I'm just thinking, I mean, you've an amazing career so far.
Well, thank you.
Some amazing things at the moment. What's next on your journey? Or is, I mean, because you've got a lot on your plate at the moment, I dare say, but what's next for you? 5, 10 years, what's the vision? What would you like to say you've achieved, and how things are going as a result of all the things that you're doing?
That's a really good question. So Leathwaite is in safe hands. As you point out, I'm a non-exec now. So, and my friends are running that, and we've hired. I think one of the things that we've been very lucky in is that we've been able to hire people that are better than us, and that's almost been one of our mantras. You know, only hire people that are better than you. So, if we look at our management team, at the level below and the level below that and the level below that, it's an extremely high quality organization now. And the four of us are thinking, crikey, we are very lucky to be working with these guys. My focus at the moment is building Inspo. It's so important. So the reason that came about, Susan, is that with the Pay Index and us helping school kids, and we've got these great interactive tools, but the thing that was missing was the connectivity with the working world. So they might be able to say, oh, I can see, yes, I want to work in this sector. But if they didn't have a friends and family network, how on earth did they go about connecting with people? And then that was exacerbated through my own kids' experience at university when they were looking to leave. And they said, well, I might be interested in going into this career. And either I could help them with my network or I couldn't. So my son was interested in going into marketing. I was able to introduce him to a couple of senior marketers that gave him some guidance in terms of this is the sort of career it is. But with my daughter, she wanted to go into PR and I wasn't able to help at all. I didn't know anybody in that sector. So it showed you that there was, and that was from me, and I'm relatively well networked because of 20 years of meeting people and saying hello to people. So you're then thinking, there's got to be a demand for this, especially amongst kids that don't have any friends and family network at all. And I saw that by meeting children when we were traveling around the country, going to schools that were using the Pay Index and talking to them about early careers. And this is what the Pay Index will help you do. And they're saying, well, great that we've got the tools, but how do we connect with them? So that was why we started it.
Yeah, and I do say it's an amazing thing because when I give talks to young people, when I even talk to them on a one-to-one basis, I always say, talk to older people about what they do. When your family friends come and visit, talk to people, understand what they do, ask questions to help them better understand the options available to them. And as you say, not every young person has access to be able to do so. So what you're doing makes perfect sense. And I'm just then thinking, as a result of Inspo, what would the world look like for you? Because I talk about a Mosaic world where everyone is valued for who they are and what they have to offer. But I'm just thinking, what would the world look like? Let's just start with the UK. What would the UK look like for young people and adults as well as a result of students being able to access Inspo?
I think, the whole concept of Inspo is connecting students with the workplace. There's a focus on social mobility, so it's helping those that need help the most. But it's open to all. So if somebody signs up, and it's inspo.uk, so it's a UK focused business at the moment. I mean, if we are wildly successful, then we will expand it internationally. That's up to my advisors.
I will say to your advisors, who I hope are listening, please do.
Well, we'll see, Susan. That's up to, hopefully we will get there. But if Inspo is wildly successful, then that should mean that any student will be able to speak to a mentor to find out about fields. So as we're growing the business, we've got certain sectors covered where if somebody's interested in going into banking and finance, for instance, we've got a number of companies that have signed up that can provide mentors in that space. My aim is to have mentors from every sector and every industry in the UK. So if you are studying art and film, wouldn't it be brilliant if we had Amazon Studios signed up as a firm as well? And then we had mentors that were working with those guys, or Netflix, or whoever it happens to be, or MGM or Universal. I'm just making names up now, as you know, but basically doesn't matter what you're doing at uni. Then I want to expand it so that we are helping and we're getting students straight from school. So we're focusing initially at the undergraduate market because we know they're over 18, so we don't have to do DBS checks on the mentors. But once we've proven that model, we want to go down into year group 12 and 13 at school, so the 17, 18-year-olds at school, and connect them with individuals as well. And that will be the next stage. But that'll all depend upon the success that we have with our in the next year.
Yeah, and at some stage I'll talk to you about care leavers as well. But for now, the key is to help you to make it a success.
Well,
So
thank you.
finally, If people want to connect with you, how do they go about doing so?
Oh, that's a very good question. The easiest way is to connect with me on LinkedIn. Or if they're interested in Inspo or the Pay Index, well, they'll get a bit of background on me there, but go to the website, go to inspo.uk or thepayindex.com. Those are the two websites. And then they'll be able to send me a message from there as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, James. It's been amazing talking to you today.
Thank you, Susan. And is there anything that I can ask you? How can I help you?
I will come back to you on that. Thank you very much for asking.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you again.
Likewise.